welcome on stage moderator Professor V. Kamakoti. We also have Professor Subhashish Chowdhury, IIT Bombay. Professor Subhashish, one of our panelists. Kindly come over, sir. And we have Shri Anil Sahasrabuddhe, AICT, joining us on the virtual mode. We have Raja Subramaniam of Synopsys. Mr. Raja, kindly come over, sir. We also have Mr. Sambit Sahu from Intel. Mr. Santosh Kumar from Texas Instruments. Mr. Venkatesh Prasad, RV and also we have Mr. Jun Gu, the General Manager of Memory Business Unit, of course, Semiconductor Manufacturing Comp. Yes, Mr. Jun Gu will join us on the virtual mode. I think both of them have joined. Yes. Good afternoon to all of you. Let's give a round of applause, whoever present here. And also, we would like to welcome all the participants who have joined us on the virtual mode and even the panelists. Welcome to both of you, sirs. And it's now straight away over to Professor Kamakoti to take us through. Over to you, sir.
So very good afternoon. Last day after lunch session. We'll try to keep as exciting as possible. So that's the first challenge, number one. So I always, I want to link this session to, I want to start with an analogy. Suppose we are driving from Chennai to Pondicherry, right? First we see a board, a placard which says Pondicherry 163 kilometers. Then there is we need to have our car, a driver, and we need to drive safely. And there will be a mechanism if we have a puncture or something, there will be somebody to attend to it. Okay? So, in my view, the government's role is that we have shown a path and we are setting up certain mechanisms to see that our travel is smooth. But then there's an industry which should own the car. And what this panel session is how we give you trained drivers who can drive the car properly. Right? So that's where we start. So we have a very exciting, a very broad spectrum of people. We have educationists, we have people from established industry, we have people who govern education, we have established business managers who have administered large-scale production industry. And we also, people who have done at-scale training, right? So that's the overall composition of this particular panel. And we would like to have, discuss this threadbare, because unless we have a driver who drives a car properly, we can't reach the end goal. And this is a very, very important component of our semiconductor mission. So with this few words, let me just start with Sambit, who is the VP and GM of IoT and Edge Computing, Intel. Intel has been playing a very important role in this, in our overall development, especially from the DIR5, the Digital India RISC-V initiative. The first chip that came out, the RISC-V chip for India, Intel had fabbed it out at 22 nanometer. I thank Intel on behalf of DR5. Specifically, we are now trying to look at multiple aspects: the design, the front end and back end. Then we have the fab manufacturing, and then ATMP. And Intel has been doing this for several years, right from the 8080 to the current, multi-core server chipsets. And you have also jumped into what we call as the domain-specific architecture. And there is also a need for understanding these verticals from the domain perspective, right? So this is also something that comes out with the IoT. So as Dave mentioned in the fireside chat, there is a need for a different approach to design and manufacturing, specifically driven from the domain perspective. So, and that requires a different type of talent. So there cannot be a generic talent. There's a different type of talent for different domains. So now Sambit being the hem of affairs for that very important business of Intel. We would like to hear from him what are those type of talent and how do we bring that up? What is the expectation from a large industry like Intel in this direction?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And I lead the IoT engineering of Intel. We have 2,500 employees doing silicon platform software worldwide. And the engineering headquarters is in India. And when I landed in India through Intel India in 2005, the story was very different. We were struggling to get one SoC done, hardly a couple of IPs. I think in the last 15 years, not only Intel in India, but all other companies have really marched pretty well in delivering products and IPs. And now we have around, in the whole country, 30,000 semiconductor engineers delivering 3,000 chips a year. This is an amazing accomplishment so far. However, we are not done yet because the semiconductor demand is significantly high right now. We are growing from 500 billion to 1 trillion by 2030 in semiconductor revenue. And there are just huge set of applications you may have heard about. So we need to continue this journey ahead, whether it is Intel, the startups, the academics, the government, all of us need to join hands together. And there are three aspects that we need to focus on to carry this journey forward. The first aspect is building the technical skills or growing the technical skills at scale, because capacity is a strategy. So we need to continue to build the capacity. And how we can build the capacity, it has to be done grounds up. We have to introduce the right level of courses, the right type of courses in our colleges, universities, in our MS and PhD programs. So I'm looking forward to my colleagues and friends here in academics to do that. Of course, we'll be happy to help. Secondly, I think we have lots of good skills today, but we are lacking in some specialized skills, particularly in architecture. And as we are growing into new fields of AI, IoT, automotive, which Professor Kamakati was saying, we need those domain-specific architectures, because those architectures for the different segments could be very different. So we need to build these technical skills at scale. And third piece is the MNCs and the other industries have to play a catalyst role in building programs and building facilities in our institutions. I'm very proud to say that Intel India is doing a lot of things. In our Unnati program, we have plans for building 100 labs in different universities very shortly. And that will help the students very much. And secondly, we also have programs to train artificial intelligence for all citizens. And we have a goal of meeting 1 million citizens, training 1 million citizens. The second piece is culture. What I see that in India, our engineers are very smart, very energetic, very passionate, very committed. But what we need to do is, how do we increase our influence? How do we define new things? How do we market ourselves in the global levels? Like in conferences or patents, we need to increase our presence there. So this culture needs to grow. Just by passion, hard work, commitment will take you to some level. To reach the levels of US, we need to really look at how do we increase our influence. And the other piece is strong collaboration is critical. The success of Silicon Valley was because of strong collaborations between universities like Stanford, Berkeley, companies like Intel and HP, and lots of startups. So lots of collaboration. We need to imbibe that in India and extend our collaboration. And third piece is innovation. We need to really innovate. The AI and 5G, these two technologies, as per market research, are going to enable a $17 trillion economy by 2035. So there are lots of opportunities to innovate. I was listening to Raja Kodri yesterday. He said, India should not be focusing on legacy stuff, but more focus on the new stuff, the upcoming stuff, like artificial intelligence, IoT, 5G, automotive. We need to innovate here. We need to innovate in these fields. And I really applaud the government's initiative and the DLI programs and PLI programs to encourage our startups. So innovation is key. So three things: technical skills at scale, strong culture of influence and marketing, and innovating in new fields. And all three is based on a foundation which our legendary ex-CEO of Intel, Andy Grove, said, that only the paranoid survive. We need to really be paranoid. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samvit. I think like now we have AI course for every discipline, AI for chemical engineers, AI for naval technologists, right? So I think we should also have a hardware design course for every engineer, specifically mechanical, chemical. I think that's going to bridge this domain-specific part, because to teach hardware to a non-electronics engineer is much easier than teaching, say, chemical to electronics engineer. I think that's the thing I get. Now we go to Santosh, who is president and MD of TI. So acronym for TI, though it's called Texas Instrument, we also call it as Training Institute. Because so every time we meet a very senior person or who are non-TI, ask where did you start? They say TI. Right? So TI has been one. And very interestingly, I also found that people who left TI actually did something else. Again, came back to TI, reskilled themselves, and again, they were very happy to accommodate them back, and even spawn out companies, and they have been doing this. And you had the first grand challenge of hundreds of engineers, or probably thousands of people participating in hardware design in the country. I think TI has launched, and it's been a continuous program. And from IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, everywhere, there have been a lot of collaborations with TI. So I request Santosh specifically to talk more about the statistics of manpower that we have, right? So today we are looking at making a holistic system, and you have been involved with mixed signal. I think every chip you touch is a mixed signal design. So how many engineers exist who can do an end-to-end chip and make it a product? And what is it that we need to bridge that gap? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. It's really hard to sit in front of professors and really speak, but I'll just do that because that's really the need here. The industry is like the audience that I see in front, right? Reasonably full, but can definitely have a little more people. But what is important to me in industry is just not really about how many people are there. It's really about the quality of the people, like the audience, right? I really care about who are sitting and what are they really going to ask us and take the message back. Similarly for industry, we are happy with much higher quality. Scale is important. I agree with Sampath, but I'm far more interested in having much higher quality. So to me, the need of the hour at this point of time, I think what we have done, industries particularly leading in the last 10 years or so, we came to India 37 years back. We were the first to come here 37 years back. The primary reason why we came and the reason why we continue to exist with the relevance it has got today is simply because of the talent. We have told it in several forums, right? That's really the reason why we exist. Today we deliver more than 50% of TI's products end-to-end right from here in our Bangalore office. I think what is important in the last 10, 15 years, maybe this is primarily because of the industry, the greed to have more people, the greed to go faster, etc. We are trying to make students coming out of the college employment ready, right? When I just look back, right, I would really like us to go back and tell the students, right? I'm telling my daughter who is doing engineering now, to be really more of product ready. To me, employment will always come. You can take a little bit more time. Go back and study linear algebra. That's far more important. Like what professor said, right? If you are actually doing one branch of engineering, learn other branches of engineering. Be a true engineer, right? The holistic engineering is far more important in the long run rather than in your own domain you really try to do something, right? So my ask is very simple. When colleges teach, let them take more time rather than sending us ready to do what we have to do 6 months or 1 year later. We can wait. Industry has its maturity, we can wait. Let us just get them to learn linear algebra really well. Let's get them to do other branches of engineering before they really come to us so that we can truly make them product ready rather than employment ready. Only if the engineers coming in are product ready, we can take the country to market ready. Right? Because today we are making employment ready, which is really the need of the hour when students are studying. But when they really go through this, right, unless they can create and conceptualize products, right, we have very less number of people than several of our competitions here in the country. The reason why we are able to do complete end-to-end designs right from conceptualization to delivery of the products is because we do have that quality of talent that we have built over time. How have we done this? We have actually gone ahead and our hiring strategy is significantly towards hiring from the campuses, right? We hire from all kinds of campuses, more than 100 campuses today historically, and 80% of our hiring today comes from campuses directly. We respect all our competition, we respect people who are going and working outside, we would like them to come back, but that is when we really start a new domain. Mostly for our existing domains that we are actually growing, we are very, very happy to have people come from the campuses, challenge us, and they do challenge us on status quo, what we are actually trying to do, and make us definitely do better. To your simple questions or what you really asked, how many people, I try to answer it by quality of the people, but I'll tell you that there are designs that we do, extremely interesting ones, very, very innovative in the market with couple of dozen people, end-to-end, most of the stuff that we do, right from architecture, development, conceptualization, which market to work on, all that we love to do that kind of work here. Two, there are definitely longer programs which involve a couple of hundred engineers working for 2 to 3 years of time. Right? So it depends on the complexity of the parts that we are picking up and the market that we are trying to grow. It's varied number. We do have all kinds of work, but my two asks is really looking at it when to make engineers coming from the campuses who are more and more prepared to be product ready and very good in other branches of engineering. While we look at semiconductor as an important industry, we simply cannot forget the fact that ESDM is so much more important, right? Because unless we do have great people who can design these boxes that our products are actually going in, and some of them coming back and working with the product definition, we are definitely not going to be as good as what we can actually be. So ESDM market, how are we really growing talent there? How can we really crisscross between semiconductor development and product development, which actually uses semiconductor chips, is very important. And absolutely with all the new work that's happening in India now, when we are also manufacturing ready and future-proofing ourselves with manufacturing, we will complete the spectrum, right? So ESDM is an important portion, manufacturing and all associated things that comes along with it. And go back and look at the semiconductor design where we have already established that clearly we are market leaders in it, right? Anything that can be done anywhere in the world, we can absolutely do that here. And several of you have played a very active role on this. But we must actually have much more active work on ESDM. We've made some progresses, but we can do a lot more there. And of course, with manufacturing, we are looking at it to see how we can complete the spectrum.
Thank you very much, Santosh. And I surely, we take these points, and of course, we'll discuss a bit after we finish one round. Now I go to Raja. Been with Synopsys. Synopsys has been a great supporter of many initiatives of our country. We have started the Special Manpower Development Program in VLSI 20 years before. And from that time, Synopsys has been our great supporter. I still remember writing purchase orders in those days in 2001, 2002. Thank you, Raja, for that. Please give a round of applause to Raja for... So, Raja, now, in this marriage of semiconductor, the bridegroom and bride is the tools, right? So, now, please do. What is it that you feel that you can do in terms of building the talent with your tools, what sort of offerings is there going to be now that we have the semicon policy for India? How are we going to, what do you think would be a great approach for our country?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. So, good afternoon. Whether it's x86 architecture or ARM architecture or RISC-V, the underlying layer of all of this is the EDA technology. So EDA technology helps all of this, and thankfully we've been, I myself personally have been in the EDA industry for almost 3 decades and conceived part of the committee member of the SMDP, even before METI was born. It was the Department of Electronics with a few key resource centers, they were called then. The top 5 IITs were part of it, and we divided the country into north, south, east, west, and picked 4 colleges of repute across India. And today, all the semiconductor companies, both global companies as well as our own companies, as well as the local companies, have really worked out of that initial vision that was painted by Department of Electronics those days. Going forward, in terms of what we are doing, in the last 20 years, and most recently, just about an hour back, right, we signed an MOU with METI to now expand this to more than 120 colleges. So within the next few months, and all of this will be put on cloud. So we'll have access to all of the EDA technology available to every nook and corner of this country, which our budding grad students can definitely leverage from and come that much more better qualified into the industry. Is this enough? Obviously not yet, because you heard the rest of the panelists talk about scale. So I'm sure for a country today, we're not just looking at India, because we ourselves, Synopsys has about 89 offices throughout the world, and thankfully I've been in the company for more than 25 years, and I get an opportunity to travel to various offices of Synopsys, and to every office, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Far East, or in the US, right? I walk in, I see an Indian employee who grow from one of our colleges here, got associated with a VLSI company, maybe TI, like Professor likes to call it, as a training institute, and then has successfully, at some point in time, either become a customer of ours or is working in the EDA technology. So it gives us, great, look back to see that we are now contributing talent to the whole world, not just India. Of course, now that with the push that, with Semicon 2020, right, we see a lot of buzz happening. And so we definitely think we are, as an EDA vendor, as an IP provider, we have the skill to provide this technology at scale so that more and more students and research institutes in India can leverage this and get to look at the next level of innovation, solving the more complex problems that all of us as humanity face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raja. And again, I place on record your great contribution personally and from your company to our India semiconductor program. Now, we just move on to manufacturing. We've been talking more about this product and the tools. We have Mr. June, who is the General Manager, Memory Business Unit of the Power Semiconductor Corporation of Taiwan. So we request Ms. June, welcome to this conference, and very nice, and thank you for joining. We would like to understand from a manufacturing perspective, what sort of manpower requirement that you have, what sort of courses you think that the students should have as a fundamental understanding of manufacturing so that they are almost ready to take up a manufacturing job, and what are the challenges you are facing specifically in recruiting such talent. Mr. June? You are muted, so hello? You are muted. We are not able to hear you.
Sir, you're muted. Kindly, yes, unmute yourself. Or can you raise the volume or something like that? Nothing is coming. Yeah, I think he is now putting on the headphone or something. Yeah, there's some connectivity problem at their end, sir. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you. Is it? I think. Can you reboot and start? I think that solves the problem mostly. Right? And,
That's again Indian technology, sir.
Right. And right.
All engineering colleges, we learn
Yeah.
that.
Hello. Yeah, we will just. We request you to reboot the system and join the link. Thank you. Yeah. So while we'll wait for Mr. John, now I request Subhashish that we have now that we have listened from all these people on the requirement of talent, now as IITs, what we can do, and please give your vision on how we are going to satisfy the talent requirement of our country, given our semicon mission.
Okay, thanks, Kama. We heard here people who have developed tools. We have like architecture. We have those who are making chipsets, and maybe we should have somebody who is also assembling and making a final product. So where does I would say people like us, IITs, NITs, so many, 1.2 million, I think, graduates. I think Professor Sahasrabudhe is here. He can tell where do we actually fit into this ecosystem. Now, right now with this semicon, the focus that we are putting in here, thanks to this great initiative by the government, the question is that what is lacking right now is the talent pool, and at what level? See, if you go back, maybe I would say around 90, early 90, and see that time all the computerization was happening, okay? And there was a need for large-scale training. And what happened was that, there was a mushrooming of so many training institutes you could see across the road, and they could, to some extent, take care of the fact, because that needed a kind of training, which those kind of institutes are good enough. Now we are talking about training people in certain areas which are very high-end, high technology areas. And normally, the lifetime of a high technology area is also very short-spanned. So there is it keeps on, you have to keep on updating yourself with the new things. You need to have a lot more depth, not only in physics, engineering, everything that you need to do. And also, what you possibly, I can take it, another example is that probably, machine learning, artificial intelligence. This also needs a lot of manpower, which is not possible by those kind of people who are on the, did a great job those days, but no longer does. Here, actually, these educational institutes have to come together. Now, what is the first thing, right? See, right now, we probably produce manpower, which you can count in, few hundreds, right? But you need like thousands, right? Okay. So we need a proper handholding, because such kind of things, when you go for high-ending, the tools, devices, everything is a lot more expensive, okay? Sometimes you cannot even touch them, right? Even those kind of things you have to do on the simulations, right? And we actually, that's where we need to have proper handholding. No institution here, I would say, whether it's IIT or something beyond that, can afford to do that kind of training unless we sit down with all the industry people together. First thing is that we need to define the curriculum, what is very appropriate. And this curriculum also, we have to keep on updating every 3-4 years or something. It's not like once it is written on the stone and you keep on doing year after year. So that will not work. So that means even, I think, if you go beyond the research institutions where the faculty has to be retrained, that's a big exercise that we need to do, right? Then what happens is that normally education, typically, is normally you have input, there is a process which is an education where you may have the pipeline of the students where you have curriculum, delivery, all these mechanism, and then there is an output at the end. Now, what is the output? As of now, the output of an educational system is delinked from the process, because we train the student the way we think we should be training them, okay, or the student think they should need to be trained, but not what I think the industry requires. That's why I said there is a void, because you may have a degree, you graduate, but you may not be employable. That kind of issues are happening. And as it goes today, the interdisciplinary and the domain of knowledge that you require is a lot more than by considering purely, let's say, E or CAs or mechanical. It has everything. If you look at the heat dissipation, you have to look at the completely the mechanical engineering aspects of everything, right? So we need these people not just from E and others, but it has to be from somebody which is a courses taken from all these disciplines. Professors and others, they can come together. But what is also required that many of these colleges, and including even many of the IITs, we may not be able to provide them the actual hands-on training. So we have to have a very strong entrepreneurship. I think the TI does a lot of things as training, but these are the people that you have to place them maybe certain amount of time that they can spend, which of course helps them to upfront what they call it pre-placement and others, which can be given to the beneficial to the students. But there has to be certain, kind of immersion of our students. Now, coming to the other one, who delivers? The professors, Now, if you tell me certain areas, as being the director of IIT, and I was the E head, we were desperate to get people in architecture. And where are the people? Or maybe in the VLSI design. If there are few, the industry will pay a lot more and get them. We'll never get them, right? Kama is an exception, okay? So if you have this kind of thing, then we need people from the industry to come and teach those courses. We have no problem. Somebody, being shared by industry and an academia. It has to be done to this thing. And this, because of the pandemic, now we have opened up all these online and other facilities. We should absolutely use that whenever it's required, right? But unless we do it together, okay, so there are a lot of experts, and they are really excellent experts, okay, in the industry. We need them here. Similarly, we will be very happy to have some of our faculty members, if they can spend time, their sabbatical, whatever it needs, okay, they can go there. So unless we do that, we'll never see the end, the light at the end of the tunnel, because we have to, what I understand, that we have to produce something like almost 85,000 engineers in this area. Where are the numbers, right? Each IIT may be producing in that particular discipline maybe 15 or 20 per year. So it will not happen. So we also need another aspect is that, the lateral movement of people who are already in certain profession, okay, and bring them on board to this one through some kind of a lifelong learning process, continuing or evening programs that we can actually do. We can work with some of this industry and do it from the industry personnel so that they can now change the job. Because see what happened, the job profile changes. Many of them would like to go into this, okay? And there are more opportunities in this. So I think we should also allow that. And then I think, the vision that we have, the Prime Minister and all these things, that the whole purpose, I think it's a collective responsibility to make sure that this happens. Thank you.
I think as directors, we have actually enabled a lot of interdisciplinary programs in all the IITs. Specifically, we started with one thing. We go to the first year class of non-computer science and ask them, what is your worry or sad? Sir, we didn't get computer science. So, so that is where we said, okay, you have a core discipline, but over the next 2 years, will find a lot of things which are much interesting than computer science. Now, all the IIT's curriculum, we have now made it so open that there will be one core area, but you can explore multiple areas, and that is going to fit very well into this semicon training also. So with this, I now go to Mr. Jun, who has joined us back. Thank you. We would like to understand the talent pool necessary for manufacturing purposes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Oh, great, great. Yeah, sorry, I had to switch to Chrome browser to get the audio problem fixed. My name is Jun Ku. I'm actually a business unit general manager for power chip semiconductor manufacturing in Taiwan. Actually, we're probably third largest foundry based in Taiwan. Worldwide is about, I think, is seventh in terms of revenue. So actually, I think with myself actually is actually not exactly in manufacturing, and I'm more on the business side. Actually, I started my career with Intel as a processor designer. I only actually joined Power Chip 2 years ago. Uh, Before that, I was mostly doing product side of things. So manufacturing is also a new thing to me as well. But unfortunately, our president has another engagement. He's not able to attend. He's probably better qualified to talk about the manufacturing. But I do, I mean, within last 2 years, with the expansion capacity everywhere, we do see a large demand on the manufacturing talent, especially in Taiwan. Actually, Taiwan, relatively to India, is a much smaller country, is about 24 million people population-wise. So the talent needed for, but actually Taiwan manufacturing wafer capacity is #1 in the world, over 20%. So as you can imagine, I mean, for manufacturing, you do actually need bodies, not just a few key smart person, right? So it is a big issue in Taiwan. So from what I can see, there are two issues. One is the R&D talent. So those are usually university or maybe even master's degree or PhD are required. So for that, that counts probably maybe 10 to 20% of the people you need in industry. Then there's other large portion is the skilled technician, right? You need people running the clean room, maintain the equipment, things like that. Those actually is also a big issue because you do need a body for that. The fab is running 24/7. You need a lot of people to do the job, right? So for the R&D part of things, actually our CEO and also the founder of the company, last year he actually seeing this talent shortage, he actually proposed to Taiwan government to establish dedicated semiconductor colleges in the top tier universities in Taiwan to particularly attract students from various backgrounds into semiconductor training. So for now, Taiwan actually established 5 semiconductor colleges in the top 5 universities. And these colleges actually, they raise fund from industry, then the government matches the fund. And the colleges is a postgraduate. So they recruit undergraduates from various disciplines, then getting to master's program and a PhD program. So the plan is to recruit about 200 students each year from each colleges. Then there's about 1,000 engineers. But this obviously is still not very sufficient. Right now in Taiwan, as I said, we account more than 20% of the global capacity. We have about maybe 200 or 300 people in the industry, right? Not all of them are in manufacturing, as you probably know. Taiwan also have a few pretty big fabless design houses. They also require a lot of engineering talent. For manufacturing, even maybe just 200,000 people, if you have about 10% or maybe 5% change every year, so you need still a lot of new, fresh talent into the field. So for this, I think for a small country like Taiwan, we actually are adjusting our policies, and the universities are actively recruiting foreign students to join into this industry. I think for this front, Taiwan and India actually can collaborate a great deal. As the panelists already discussed, for design and software, India actually had a long history working with global companies, especially the US companies. So there are a lot of talent base already. But for semiconductor manufacturing, a lot of things you really have to have hands-on experience, not just classroom courses or remote learning, right? So Taiwan actually, Taiwan fabs and can probably provide this training ground for the India as a kind of as a practicing or training ground for India hardware manufacturing engineering talents. So I think actually our CEO is also promoting this as well, and I think we have worked closely with India Institute of Taiwan, which is more like a India embassy in Taiwan to try to establish this kind of program. Actually, I think India I mean, with large population and a very well undergraduate education, such as IIT, I think it does can serve as a talent pool or hub for the global semiconductor industry. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And yes, we would have a lot of things in common. And certainly there are some models that already we had worked out with Taiwan. And I think the chairman AICT is here and he will mention during his remarks. Thank you very much. And yes, we look forward to have many more such interactions and learn the best from each other. With this, I just go to addressing scale. I'll request Venkatesh, who is the Group CEO of RV Skills, trained more than several lakhs of people so far in this semiconductor domain. And like to request your remarks specifically addressing the scale point of view.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I thank the organizers for having me on the panel here. I represent a brand, RV, which has a 75-year of legacy in traditional education and about 20 years specifically in skilling. In the year 2002, the president of the Rashtriya Shikshana Samiti Trust, Dr. Panduranga Shetty, felt the need to enhance the employability and offer skills to the students. And I was the founder CEO setting up RV VLS at that time, which has now become RV Skills. Now, in the last 17 years, we have trained around 10,000 engineers, and we have close to 100% placement in the VLS industry. We have placed people in product companies and service companies, in EDA companies, in IP and foundries. So we have some experience that I would like to share with the audience today about how we can scale and achieve the goal, a very ambitious goal of skilling 1 lakh engineers over the next 5 years. The first and foremost thing that over the last 17 years that I have seen is there is lack of awareness about VLSI. And within my extended family, I'm finding it difficult to convince people that after you finish your engineering, you have to get into the VLSI industry. There's a lot of scope. So I congratulate the government for setting up Semicon. I think all these days the awareness was being created by the industry bodies. For the first time, the government is doing this. Government has a bigger machinery, and I think the message will go out far and wide. So I really think that this will bring in a lot of awareness, create a lot of awareness amongst the people. Now, when you do that, the next problem that we're facing is the lack of talent. Even the IITs are not immune to this problem. We have very well qualified engineers who are either going to the fintech industries or to other industries, which with the awareness and creating a roadmap, I think we can plug the talent pool. There will solve some portion of the problem. The third, and I think we have Sahasrabudheji here on the panel too, is with NEP coming out, there is so much that we can utilize it for the betterment and improving the employability of the students out there. There are provisions currently for doing mini projects. There are provisions for internships. There are provisions for doing a final year project. I think we should not let this opportunity go waste. We should, as a body, sit together, discuss, and formulate a strategy. I think Subhashish was talking about content and how we can develop content. There's a lot of experience on putting out contrived test cases where we can enhance the productivity of engineers who come out from the colleges. Another piece which will help us in scaling is adopting technology. We just heard from Raja talking about going to the cloud. I think that is the way to go. The biggest issues that we have found with most colleges is installing the software and getting it to invoke a license and check out a license. So this will greatly improve that, and going cloud, using the technology and using LMSs in order to take forward is the right way to do. Now, one thing is, when I started this institute, I was 35 years, and now I am 54. So I'm aging every year. But the age of the student coming to the institute is still around 25, 26. Over the years, what we have seen is the attention span of the student is falling. Now I cannot hold his attention for more than 7 or 8 minutes. So when we take up education through a blended online mode, I think we should be mindful of the pedagogy of teaching that we are going to adopt. So we have to adopt concepts of micro-learning, and we have to make sure that it's interactive, it is engaging, so that the learning outcomes are there, completion rates are high. Otherwise, we are going to continue to see a very low completion rates on online courses. That's about it, which I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we go to Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe, the chairman of AICTE. Sir, so we have a challenge, we have a need, we have some basic building blocks, we have industry and international partners who are willing to support. So, sir, it is all in your hands. How do we put all these things together? Because you are now the boss of the scaling. And so, all yours. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Kamakoti. In fact, I listened to all the industry people, IIT and RV College. So what it comes out to be is semiconductor mission has to be certainly multidisciplinary. We require not only people from electronics and VLSI background, but we require people from chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, and all other disciplines of engineering to put together. And therefore, and also, as June was saying, we require fabrication, manufacturing requires another set of people, be it in terms of equipment handling, be it clean room handling, be it running the fab itself in terms of quality product delivery, and when the fab is running continuously 24/7, ensuring water supply, electricity supply. So it is absolutely multidisciplinary in nature, and therefore we cannot have any other thing than solving a jigsaw puzzle. We have polytechnics and ITIs required for lower end manpower requirements to run the fab, to run the machinery, to take care of the technician job. On the other side, there may be some supervisory people at the diploma level. and then engineers who are graduating engineering for taking care of some of the little higher end work, and people from IIT and universities who come from research background to have the further new designs to be created. And I am sitting here today from Hubli. I'm in Karnataka only, from another institution in Hubli, which started a very small unit of what is known as Sankalp Semiconductors. This was about 7-8 years ago, with 6 people on the campus, and today it is more than 600, giving a lot of designs to US companies. So I think there is a lot of talent. We should not think that there is no talent in this country. In a small place like this, if there is talent, I think talent exists all over. What we need to do is, we need to do a finishing touch to that. We need to hone their skills further. And more importantly, rather than theoretical knowledge, how do we bring them actual practice, hands-on? And that is where students will not get bored. You were telling, Venkatesh, that they have an attention span of 7 to 8 minutes in a classroom where there is one-way delivery of lecture. If you involve them in interactive discussions, the attention span is more than 30 minutes. And if you ask them to do something in the laboratory, work on the, on the field, you have to develop some tools yourself. I think their attention span is pretty long. And this is our experience in terms of Smart India hackathons, which we have been conducting in the last 4 years. Challenging problem statements given to them, they give solutions, and 36 hours without sleeping they work. I think on one hand in the classroom, their attention is 8 minutes. On the other side, they can work non-stop 36 hours. So it is actually, how do we use that talent? How do we hone that talent? And that is where the role of educational institutions, first in terms of the curriculum being up to date, using industry standards, calling industry people for even taking some of the classes, sending students and faculty to the industry for internships, and so that they're abreast with what is happening in the field day in and day out. The technologies are rapidly changing, and there must be constant lifelong learning philosophy adopted by teachers first, and then in turn to the students. I'm sure with this as the mission, which the Honorable Prime Minister is talking about, Atmanirbhar Bharat, with huge budgetary provision which has been also made, I'm sure we will all put together our efforts in order to make this successful. I think I would like to give simple statistics. In the AICT approved total 3,200 engineering colleges and about 2,800 polytechnics who give diplomas. In 458 colleges, there are 8,543 seats available at MTech level in this field. Maybe not directly, only directly or indirectly, embedded system design, VLSI, nanotechnology, or combination all of this in electronics department, postgraduate seats. In terms of undergraduate and polytechnic, this year we have opened up 2 courses, BTech in electronics engineering with VLSI design and technology, as well as I think these are 2 important. What they start taking up these courses, I'm sure some training will be required, and I'm happy. June has already said that Taiwan is open for giving internship opportunities for our students. We have been working with them. We are working with US universities in terms of 2+2 joint bachelor's program in engineering, 1+1 master's program in engineering, research collaborations in terms of internship opportunities, joint offering of the courses. I think sky is the limit. We put in all our efforts to make it that this semiconductor mission of the Government of India, where it has been very serious about it, make it successful. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. So we end this panel on a very, very positive note that we have all the building blocks. We have a path by which we can scale. We have the support from the government through the semicon policy, and that we have a great demand for, from the employability point of view and from the customer's point of view. And we also have great support from all the international partners. With this, there's nothing that's going to stop, and in the years to come, we are going from height to height. With this, I thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to come together and talk about this most important driver for the semicon policy, the human capacity without which it's not going to be possible to run such a large program. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all getting set for a very, very interesting session. Dignitaries have taken time off and they have come exclusively for this conference. So I would request all of you to kindly take your seats. And I would request kind to refrain some little movement when the session is on. So please take your seats and we're going to start the session in just a bit. As the stage is being set, I'll utilize this time to give us a very quick intro into the moderator of this session. Professor C. Raja Mohan will be the moderator for this session. He is the director of Institute of South Asian Studies, National University of Singapore. He is the contributing editor on international affairs for the Indian Express. He has taught international relations at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and the Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. So I would request Professor C. Raja Mohan to kindly come over. Yeah, you're there. And ladies and gentlemen, the moderator for this all-important session, the panel discussion on global partnerships for the future of technology. I would also like to call upon Mr. Barry O'Farrell, Australian High Commissioner to India. Hearty welcome to you, sir. Also, I would like to call upon Noor Gillon to kindly come over, sir, the Ambassador of Israel. Drew Shifleton, Consulate General of U.S. Embassy. Also, we have Gert Heiskoop, the Consulate General of Netherlands. Dong Kyu Kim, the Director General of Korea. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's one of the most illustrious panel you would have attended several conferences, but this, I think, is a real, let's give a huge round of applause for this highly illustrious panel. I mean, the first of its kind in the country, which is happening in SemiconIndia, the first ever edition of SemiconIndia. I would now hand over the session to Professor Raja Mohan to take us through.
Thank you for that introduction. We have an exciting panel, as the MC said. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you for this very special panel in this Semiconductor Summit. Unlike most other sessions, this one is going to be focused on global partnerships for this mission. We all know the semiconductor mission of the government of India is one of the most ambitious and one of the most challenging missions ever undertaken by India since independence. There were a number of other missions before. I mean, you can go back to Homi Bhabha and the start of India's nuclear energy program that spawned the space program, that also spawned the India's electronics program. And then we've had a whole range of missions since then. But this one, seeking to make India a semiconductor hub, involves a far greater energies, far greater scale. It needs to bring together India's technology, science, industrial capabilities, and bring them in partnership with the global partners. So this makes it even foreign policy and diplomacy are going to be very much part of it. But in the end, it's really about building national capabilities in partnership with other countries for mutual benefit. And we are undertaking this mission at a time of very complex international environment, which has fundamentally altered the context of the semiconductor manufacturing. Till 3 years ago, the general belief was that efficiency is what mattered. Borders did not matter. Politics did not matter. You took production to where it was most efficient to produce, and things moved from one part to another part. So China, being the factory of the world, did not make a difference to the world, because it didn't matter where it was being produced, as long as it was being produced efficiently. Taiwan produces most of the world's chips. That didn't seem to matter. But today, 3 years down the road, since that general assumption, what we have today is politics matters as much as economic efficiency. Because there are major conflicts between US and China. There is also the India-China conflict. There is now the Russia versus West conflict. So these conflicts have created a fundamentally different situation in which technological cooperation must take place. We've already seen significant changes in the international environment, and that the dangers of relying just on one source for production of anything, that is a problem. Therefore, today the world is looking at new ways of doing things. And within that, the semiconductors question is far more complicated, because no other sector has had so much geographic concentration. Just you had Taiwan and South Korea, my friend is here, that most of the production has taken place. China is trying to catch up with them. And then the industry concentration too is really just down to 3 companies now. So this is really a completely challenging situation. And we are trying in this situation. The principle now is everyone believes large countries must have some national capabilities in this. But at the same time, the scale and the difficulty involved in making semiconductors is so complicated, it can only be done in international collaboration. So partnerships and collaborations become a key element. And the partnerships, unlike in the past, are going to be between like-minded nations. Nations which trust each other, which can bet on critical elements of this vital supply chain, because semiconductors are everywhere, that we need to have enough trust and political confidence in each other. So that is the context in which the semiconductor mission is operating. And within that, today on this panel, I can tell you that we have 5 of the most like-minded partners on this stage. We have, if you go from the other end, we have Israel, ambassador from Israel. Israel, is one of the world's most leading technological centers of innovation. So there you are. I think they're into this business very well. And then we have the Dutch council here, who, Netherlands is the only country that makes the machines which make the chips. A lot of people make chips, but only Netherlands makes the most advanced machinery, the extreme ultraviolet mechanics of making chips. We have Mr. Kim, who is from the Korea, which makes a lot of chips, but Koreans, as you know, are the second largest producer of chips. So yeah. We have Australian High Commissioner, Barry, who's Australia, is probably today leading the whole technological coalition building in relation to India and its partners. They're key members of the Quad. They run this whole lot of programs which try to bring partners together. And here they too will have a major role. And finally, Drew from the US Embassy in Delhi, who looks after the economic, is the Minister of Economics. The US, of course, has fundamentally altered the template in which the semiconductor mission is going to take place. The last 3 years have seen dramatic changes in the way the US looks at China and the US determination to decouple at least critical sectors from China and set the stage for a new framework for cooperation. So this is the 4 panelists that we have. So I'll go from the left. What we'll do is, what I've asked each of the panelists to speak for about 6 minutes, essentially addressing 3 broad issues. One, where is the country in relation to technological development of semiconductors? 2, their international strategy for collaboration. And where does India fit into that partnership model that they have? So Ambassador Naur, we'll start with you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Raja, for speaking of Israel as being a technological hub. Many refer to Israel as the startup nation because of the huge numbers of startups per capita, the highest in the world. Investments in startups, highest in the world per capita, and total number of startups over 7,000 for a country of 9 million people. So also in the semiconductor field, Israel is very active. The biggest player in Israel is Intel. Intel has in Israel for quite many years a fab, but also as important or more important, an R&D center for semiconductors. And another player, we have actually 3 main players. The second important player is Tower, which is one of the world leaders when it comes to analog semiconductors. Tower, an Israeli company, has 8 factories around the world, 2 of them in Israel, and R&D in Israel. And the third player, there are many smaller companies, startups and others, who are producing elements of the semiconductor. So technology which is connected to semiconductor. And now the 2 first players are probably going to get married soon, in the sense that Intel announced that it's going to procure Tower during this year. So the process has started, not concluded yet. What the good news, I'm coming directly to the good news and the practical news. The good news is that this morning I had the pleasure and the honor to be with the Chief Minister when we witnessed the signing of an MOU between Karnataka and Tower for building here a fab. So, Tower, by the way, has with the space agency already made the first fab. It's not a commercial one, it's a research one, but it's still working here, the only fab that is working. So hopefully, if the whole process will continue as we hope, in the coming year, I think the breaking of the ground and the beginning of the works here, this will be a very important fab in the sense that it will create here also the ecosystem. So directly in such a factory, the investment is around $3 billion for analog. Directly, it should employ around 1,500 people, but indirectly many, many more. But more important, it will create here, I think, an ecosystem around the semiconductor. Also, we spoke this morning together with the Chief Minister and the Minister for Technology during the signing that the IIT here and other institutions will have to start preparing the graduates for practical. That was the request of the Chief Minister, to prepare the graduates with practical preparations to work in the field of semiconductor. So I think, I hope it will happen. It will be a big thing, especially for us, India and Israel, because we are celebrating now 30 years of diplomatic relations, and this will be a huge celebration for us if we can do that. So we are happy. We are happy for Karnataka. We are happy for India, and we are very happy for Israel. So thank you.
Thank you, Naur, giving us the Israeli perspective. Gert, tell us about what the Dutch think.
Does this work? Can you hear me in the back? Yes, wonderful. Namaskara. Good afternoon, everybody. A pleasure to be here and to give you some perspective from Northwestern Europe. electronics, semiconductors is big business these days. When I joined the Foreign Service 40 years ago, I'm as old as the integrated circuit. We were both born in 1958. When I joined the Foreign Service 40 years ago, it was a different world. I mean, an incubator was something you only found in a hospital. An accelerator was something you found in a car. And a conductor was a person who was standing in front of an orchestra. So a semiconductor was the same guy with a maximum height of maybe 4 feet. But all that changed. Nowadays, these things have a different meaning. Our claim to fame in the Netherlands when it comes to semiconductors is that we are not so much a huge producer of chips, ICs, and semiconductors, although we produce these things. We make the machines that produce chips and semiconductors. The company that is involved most of that in this business is ASML. I have a strong personal link with that company as well because one of my sons works in ASML. And they have now something like 80% of the market. It's on the Dutch stock market is the biggest company by far. Their stock market value is as big as Shell and Philips combined, and these are not small companies either. And the future for this sector is very bright. There's a lot of collaboration already with India in this field because in the Netherlands, the biggest Indian community in the European Union lives in the Netherlands, 30,000 people. And most of these people work in technology. A lot of them in the south where ASML is located. You see, when you compare India and the Netherlands, we have the capital, Delhi for India, Amsterdam for the Netherlands, where everybody always travels to. There's a finance center, Delhi, Mumbai here, and Amsterdam also in the Netherlands. And there is the Science and Technology Center. That is, of course, Bangalore here in India. And it is Eindhoven Brainport in the south. And that is where so many people work. We employ thousands of scientists and engineers, and many of them from India. You see, Dutch universities train a lot of Indian students. There are now over 3,000 Indian students studying in the Netherlands, most of them in fields like engineering and science. And we try to keep these guys because they're bright and smart, and they often work for ASML. Yes, you can applaud your countrymen living in... We're very grateful to have them because we need them for our high-tech economy. And we're looking for methods to improve and increase the cooperation between our two countries. You couldn't possibly have missed the visit of Indian President Ram Kovind to the Netherlands a few weeks ago. It was all over the press. The Dutch Foreign Minister was here last week, and we are looking at ways to increase the cooperation between our two countries, also in the field of semiconductors, because, as you all know, there is a problem with semiconductors these days. There's not enough of them. It's hampering the production of cars, household electronics, phones, TVs, you name it. These things are in every item we need. So production needs to be extended to other places, and it has to go up. Right now it's concentrated in East Asia, in Taiwan, Korea. My neighbor will talk about it later on. Japan and China. It's not a good idea to increase production in a country like China for many reasons, also for strategic reasons. So it would be good if we increase production in a like-minded country like India, and that is one of the things we're aiming to see. And that is basically what we're working on. It's one of the part of my job here, and I see that the moderator is looking at me, so I'm overextending my time. So this is where I stop. I'll take questions later on. I'll pass the mic to my neighbor on the right, Mr. Kim. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gert. It's really I think one of the points that are being discussed in this summit is the Indian talent and its global impact, and I think that's what you mentioned. Thank you for that. And Kim from the...
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Thank you so much, to invite me here in the Bengaluru for the India future business industry. I think that it is a very significant event for the future of India, and I'm very happy to have you here because I live in here. So especially I would like to thank you, Honorable Minister, Sri Rajiv Chandrasekhar, to host this significant event here in Bengaluru. Appreciate. I can say that Tuna Pada Kalu. Is it right? Thank you. Say the Korean companies who have established their facility in India have tremendous contribute the concept of making India policy for the last 30 years since 1990s. As everyone here, industry leaders know that starting from LG Electronics, Samsung Electronics, and Hyundai Motors, Kia, POSCO, most of the Korean manufacturers, major manufacturer conglomerate, have their presence in India to hire several 100,000 employees to produce the best quality of product for the client in here and domestic or overseas. That's the concept of making India, we believe. It's not just for the Korean company itself. It is for the India and for the global, the concept of making India. I want to point out the Hyundai Chennai factory have produced 700,000 cars in a year. Among them, 150,000 cars are exporting to other countries, Middle East and South Asia, which is exactly the model of making India, the asset of India's industry. So this is the concept that Korean companies wanted to build up relationship in India. Now here in Bengaluru, I want to say Samsung and LG, they have the biggest overseas research center here in Bengaluru, hiring around 4,000 high qualified IT engineers to develop and research for their product to make the better one. So, among them, I'm very proud that Samsung has a managing director is Indian, Mr. Dipesh. It's for 7 years. Continuously grew up, continuously evaluated the best leaders of Samsung. So that's, frankly speaking, I'm very proud of that because he loves India, he loves Korea. So we wanted to build up those kind of relationship here in India. Now that we can say the semiconductor area, still, the Korean companies have not decided anything, I think, but now they can understand how much India is, ambitious to make the best of semiconductor, hubs for the market in global. So I think this kind of session and government is, the plan and strategic plan can contribute. A lot of it, the semiconductor companies, including Korea, Japan, Netherlands, Israel here, they can understand now. They have to understand now to come to India, to be a friend of India, for the people of India and for the people of the global. So hopefully this session can contribute on that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Thanks for that. Ambassador, very High Commissioner for Australia.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today, and congratulations to the Minister on the inaugural Semicon, because everything I hear is that it's terrific, and certainly Australia's delighted to have been invited. And to answer the question that I think the panel's meant to answer, is Australia is also up to cooperating with India, with other countries, whether through the Quad or bilaterally, to ensure that in this area we not only have competition within the world, but we have those secure supply chains that are necessary. The moderator was a bit generous to Australia at the start, saying that we had a critical role. It's a bit hard when there are fewer people in Australia than the number of 9-year-olds in India to suggest that we have a big input into anything. But we do have some niche capabilities around design, research and manufacture, and also silicon irradiation. But where I think we come into our own relates to critical minerals. Most people know Australia as a responsible and reliable resource partner. We've been blessed with critical minerals and rare earths. Most of the world's largest recoverable deposits of those exist within Australia. And our government has prioritised it by 2030. We're taking a leaf out of India's book. We've set ourselves a mission by 2030 to become a global player in relation to the supply of critical minerals that people in this room know are far more critical, not just to semiconductors, but so much of this emerging and critical technology than we could see. So we're already working, and we've worked with the United States on their 100-day review. We're working through the Quad on identifying and mapping supply chains across the Indo-Pacific. We're working bilaterally with India, and we'll continue to do so. The trade agreement signed only a few weeks ago gives India first shelf or top row access to investment in Australia, critical minerals and rare earth mines. And one of the minister's colleagues is expected in Australia in June, along with Kabul, the arm in India that makes investments in these sectors. And at the same time, the Australian government is seeking to de-risk investment for people from overseas and within Australia to develop these mines, where the Australian government has put money on the table to accelerate development of this sector because of its importance. Why are we doing this? We're doing this principally because, as has been mentioned before, the world has changed over the last 4 years. We're doing this because of the health and economic lessons that came out of COVID, that supply chains and diversified supply chains and secure supply chains with reliable partners are more important than ever. I'm sorry to say this in front of my Netherlands colleague. We also learned the lesson of diversification. So I'm not suggesting Australia is about to get into the business of building chip manufacturing equipment, but it is one of the lessons that we learnt through that COVID period. So Australia can participate in a number of ways. It's determined to continue to work with India. We're establishing a consulate general here in Bengaluru because of the importance of the tech sector in this part of India. Importantly, we're establishing a joint centre of excellence on critical and emerging technologies policy with India because we want to work together with India and Australia and with other like-minded partners to ensure that the governance and the rules that are set up around these technologies internationally are rules that do what we in this room want, which is to enable people to fulfil their incredible ambition, not to be used for coercion. Australia also wants to continue to cooperate with India in relation to education. I regret that I'm sitting here as part of the second panel, which is all male. We in Australia, and I know in India, are working very hard to get more girls and women into STEM courses and opportunities, because you can't lock out half of the potential in your country when it comes to any industry, let alone this industry where so many women have done so well in the past. We want to also ensure that under the national education policy, more Australians come here to be turned on to the opportunities that exist in India. I visited Israel last century, where it was made clear to me that that military service that is part and parcel, regrettably, of Israel's existence had also turned many young people on to the technology that's found within the defence forces of Israel. I'd like more Australians to come here to Bengaluru, to the other tech centres at Pune and the like, to see what is going on in this sector so that more of them will get involved. Australia has a history of good research that in past times has gone to a northern neighbour of India's. We're determined with a new breakthrough in relation to low-cost solar panels that will come here to India because that's the only country that can scale up and provide that competition. I think it does matter. The only thing that matters about whether a country's got complete control of a particular sector is how open and democratic its economy is. Taiwan poses no threats, but when autocratic nations get control of these things, they do tend to distort markets, and that's the other lesson out of COVID. So it's terrific to be here. It's terrific to participate. We do have opportunities which we want to pursue with India, with the world more broadly, and we're certainly up to the job of ensuring we have those critical supply chains that will guarantee that India's latest mission, its semiconductor mission, will not only be achieved because of the incredible talent that exists within this country, but also the agility and the willingness of industry to get behind government missions to deliver the outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you for that stimulating presentation. Drew, this floor is yours.
Let me just say that it's a really incredible pleasure to be here. I would like to thank the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology and the program organizers for inviting us to join Semicon and for convening this panel of trusted trading partners to discuss semiconductors, a product that I think we'll agree has become central to our lives. Try living your daily life without them, and a common focus, of course, to our countries. But first, I'd like to step back just for a quick second from the tech stuff, and I'd like to use this moment to reflect just a little bit on the US-India partnership itself. This year marks the 75th anniversary of US-India diplomatic relations. And from science and space to new and emerging technologies and protecting against cybercrime, to combating climate change, to finding clean sources of energy and protecting our oceans, and on to expanding our trade. There's no area of human endeavor right now that the United States isn't working on with India. And as the world continues to open, we have multiple engagements that we've held, including just last month, just a few weeks ago, we had the US-India 2+2 ministerial dialogue, where Secretary of State Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin welcomed Minister of Defense Rajnath Singh and Minister of External Affairs Dr. Jaishankar to Washington, D.C. And that was preceded by a virtual meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. And these and many more two-way visits show the high level of commitment to our enduring bilateral relationship. And then, of course, there's trade and investment, which has really long been at the heart of the US-India relationship. Due to these ever-expanding ties over the last 2 decades, our bilateral trade in goods and services went from, in 2001, it was $20.7 billion, and last year it was almost $160 billion. So that exceeded the pre-pandemic trade record. In other words, it was a new record. Our bilateral trade has a really wide and lasting impact also on our economies and societies. And that relationship has just continued to expand over time. Most major US firms, and many that you've heard from throughout this conference, of course, have significant investments and operations in India. And they have made the United States the largest source of foreign direct investment in India. And as the world's 2 largest democracies, our countries, the United States and India, also, we share a resolved commitment to protect our citizens, and we've helped to provide security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region that has underpinned our economic prosperity, and we're going to keep right on doing that. Also, just a really quick reference I would like to make, of course, to COVID-19, which has really, it's tested that resolve for all of us. But over the last 2 years and counting, the COVID-19 pandemic has really driven home the reality of our catalyzed reliance on technology and connectivity, and the disastrous effects of global trade disruptions that has been driven by the fallibility of our supply chains, which is another topic which directly bears upon why everyone is gathered here this weekend. And as all nations are seeking to revive economic growth, developing manufacturing and creating jobs. We believe India has a historic opportunity to fully integrate into Indo-Pacific supply chains, including of semiconductors, as investors and manufacturers increasingly seek alternatives to China in the wake of long-term rising costs and pandemic-driven instability. And as India saw in the 1990s, the more open an economy is, the faster it really grows. While we recognize that all countries are working to discern, what are the economic lessons that we've had from the pandemic, and we're all trying to figure out how to implement policies to promote economic recovery. We know that the benefits that U.S. companies have brought to bear in India, and we look forward to their continued participation in the Indian economy. And we were glad that Prime Minister Modi prioritized joining global and regional supply chains in his August 2020 Independence Day speech, and supported achieving this by improving India's business and investment environment. And then, as President Biden said last October at the Summit on Global Supply Chain Resilience, working together across the entire supply chain, from raw materials to warehousing and distribution, is really the best way to reduce delays and build in greater resilience for the future. And so let me just say now, before I wrap this up, that the United States sees 4 fundamental principles that encourage more resilient global supply chains. One is transparency. Improving transparency and information sharing will help all countries mitigate and respond to these global supply chain shocks. And this includes working with businesses to understand their own vulnerabilities. Transparency in supply chains promotes awareness of risks and potential shortages. It identifies bottlenecks and assists organizations in determining where alternative sources of critical inputs are needed. Next is diversity, openness, and predictability. Open global markets are fundamental in supporting resilient supply chains. Countries have to work together to ensure we have multiple reliable sources of raw materials, intermediate goods, and finished goods. Every country represented here today has a role to play in promoting that kind of shared benefit. Next is security. Countries discuss that security needs to be recognized as a high priority for all players with supply chains, especially in technology supply chains, at critical infrastructure nodes, other points within the supply chain that really must not fail to prevent damage or disruptions that interfere with critical systems or infrastructure. It's important that governments work with industry to better understand and manage security risks to supply chains. And then the last is sustainability. Governments, industry, and civil society should work together to promote and accelerate global sustainability goals, including implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate change and international labor and worker conventions where they're applicable. Creating fair, sustainable labor conditions strengthens our supply chains and it leads to more innovative, productive industry and greater shared prosperity. Finally, multilateral work with many of our partners here today has made supply chain resilience, especially for semiconductors, a very important part of our coordination. And we've seen that. Last year, the Biden administration expanded the reinvigoration of the Quad, which includes, of course, India, Japan, Australia, my country, with 2 leader-level summits. During the first ever in-person Quad Leaders Summit, we put forth ambitious initiatives to deepen our ties and advance practical cooperation on 21st century challenges, including COVID, promoting high standards infrastructure, combating the climate crisis, space and cybersecurity, cultivating next generation talent in our countries, and partnering on emerging technologies. And so with the Quad's Critical and Emerging Technology Working Group, we're using it to actively talk about semiconductor supply chains and how we can maximize the Quad as a partner for these kind of capabilities and resources. So to conclude, as trusted supply chain partners, all of us here have an opportunity to learn from the crisis that we faced, whether it's working bilaterally through the Indo-Pacific or through the Quad, building systems that support technology, including semiconductor manufacturing, will help guard us against future vulnerabilities, and it will really help strengthen our bonds. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew. I think our panelists have been very disciplined. They all finished in 35 minutes. It's fantastic to have panelists like this for a moderator. So please think of various questions, short and brief and sharp pointers to the speakers. But before that, I just wanted to ask one short question to each of these speakers. So maybe we can do this like a quick fire round, as they say. Now, I mean, there is the Quad, which our two gentlemen to my right pointed out. But there is talk about another Quad, which Israel, India, US, and the United Arab Emirates want to form. And one of the central ideas was about innovation, where Israel is strong. And UAE and Israel have also worked on the chip production. So can you tell us briefly how that Quad might work on the chip production and what it can do to semiconductor mission here?
Yes, I think that we're witnessing, while the world is changing, also the Middle East is significantly changing. The Abraham Accords was a huge change where for many years, many countries a few countries in the Middle East had very good relations with Israel, but did it under the table, under the radar, as you would say, but now everything is in the open and much more convenient and comfortable to do. I believe that the world is also changing in the sense that countries are looking for regional alliances to promote. And the idea, by the way, of this Western Quad, or whatever name you can give it, the group of four, which is India, US, Israel, and UAE, is to work on infrastructure, but in a very wide definition of infrastructure, with an emphasis on technology. So I think it's a wonderful combination, because these are four countries that are very friendly. India brings in technology and a huge market. UAE brings in finances and ability to transport and build business, and the Americans are bringing the full package. We are the smallest player there, I believe, in many aspects, and we mainly bringing technology. So I believe that such alliances are extremely important for the future of our countries, of our relations, India and Israel, but also with other countries. And we have high hopes from this group, and many to follow later on.
Thank you. Kurt, if I might ask you, I mean, last week we had the European Commission President in town, Delhi. They've announced the Trade and Technology Council. I mean, these two areas were considered different, but today technology is very much part of it. So since we're the only European here, maybe you could tell us, because this is the only council, Europeans have only done it with the United States. So this is only with India that they formed. Can you just tell us in a nutshell to our audience what this Trade and Technology Council means?
Well, Europe is, of course, people are always a little confused about Europe, especially Americans have a little confusion about Europe, because in North America is about the same size as Europe, about 10 million square kilometers. You only have 3 countries there if you include Mexico, and only 3 languages. And when you go to Europe, you have 51 countries and about as many languages. It's a very confusing place. So we're also one of the cradles of democracy, actually, in Europe. And we're looking forward to build up the cooperation in all fields, not only in technology, but in every field, with other democracies in the world. And India, of course, being the biggest democracy in the world, is a prime player in that whole field. Democracy is under pressure. I mean, there are fewer democratic countries now than there were 20 years ago, and some countries are obviously drifting in the wrong direction. So we, as like-minded countries, we need each other, and we need to cooperate in every possible field, technology as well as politics and economy more in general. We see a lot of investment flowing to each other. My country is the 3rd largest investor in India. India is the 4th largest investor in the Netherlands. That's not as impressive as the figures my American colleague just mentioned, but bear in mind that Holland is a small country. We only have 17 million people, not the 320 million of the US or the 1.4 billion that India has. And a lot of that investment flows to one state. When you look at the numbers from the Ministry of Trade in Delhi, you see that over the last quarter that we have information available, was the first quarter of fiscal year 2021-22, 49% of all foreign direct investment flowing into India goes to one state, Karnataka. And my friend Karnatakans, and I'm one of them because I live also here in Karnataka, you're applauding for yourself, huh? Because you're doing an excellent job. and within Karnataka, most of that money flows to Bangalore, because when we talk about technology, it's mostly Bangalore, Pune and Hyderabad that are taking the lead in developing this country and making it a hub. And as I said before, it's crucial. We have to extend the technology in the world, and we have to extend the number of producers of semiconductors